Hey guys, Kaylin at Elbow Mill Farm. Today I've decided to show you all the things I've screwed up over the last couple months. It's been a while since I did a video. Spring gets really busy on the farm between baby bunnies and starting seedlings and hatching out chicks and ducklings. All that stuff takes up a whole lot of time and things start to get away from you. And if you follow me on Facebook, you know I'm a firm believer in showing the good with the bad. And I think a lot of people have a tendency to only show the good, and the problem with that is it makes new people think that when they're failing, when they're not getting things right, that it's something they're doing. And in reality, it's just part of it. So what I thought I'd do today is, as I go around and do my chores, make some video of all the things I've done wrong, if I know how I'm planning on fixing them, telling you guys how I'm going to fix them. I'm probably not going to fix them as I go, but that way you guys can get an idea of just how many things can go wrong in I think it's been about 2 months. Some of the things I'm going to have to push off on my kids. I just can't get it all caught up. And then one of the other things that happened is 2 weeks ago, I got really sick. And so not only did I have a week of not even being able to do my own chores, like I couldn't even feed and water, but then I had a week of trying to recover from that. So needless to say, no real projects got done in that amount of time. Really, it was the bare minimum, just anything I needed to do to keep the animals alive, and that was about it. But so as I go around today, I'll give you some videos to show you just how out of control it can get, so that when you're starting to have things go wrong on your farm or homestead, you're not really feeling like it's just you. You can see that all of us do it, just some of us aren't very open about how bad we screw up. But I'm going to start with the pig pen and show you how out of control that's gotten. Okay, so I'm in the pig pen, and there's the pig, and he's gotten pretty big over the last couple months. The way the pig pen is set up, it used to be, I had a rabbit colony, and we fenced it in, and there was all kinds of stuff in here for them to hide in, and they, instead of being in cages, they just kind of ran free. The only problem I had with that is, you can see the fence isn't super tall, and I was having predators get in here and get them, and it's such a big pen that trying to cover it completely so nothing could get in was more than I wanted to do. So I just switched back to bigger hutches. What we did to make it ready for the pig is we added electric around about nose height. Hey, pig. And here's where things got out of control. With the electric, when the fence is touched by grass, it starts to short it out. And before I got sick, it was already starting to short a little bit, but we had a whole lot of rain during that time period. And you can see that the grass is completely up over the fence. So that has to be weed-eated today. The other thing I've got some issues with is pigs are pretty destructive, and they'll find anything they can to mess with. And he actually pulled part of his hut, like broke pieces of wood off of it, and he has shoved them up over here against the fence. So now, after we get the weed eating done, I'm going to have to pull all these pieces of wood, and I'm not sure, he found plastic somewhere, but take all this mess out, get it out from under the fence. I'm going to have to dig the fence, like where he's pushed all this dirt up. I'm going to have to dig all that back out and get it so that the fence is working again, because it doesn't do any good to have a fence if he could go right through it if he chose. And thankfully he hasn't tried, because I really don't want to try to catch him if he figures out that that fence is shorted out and that there's nothing I can do about it. But so that's how I'm going to fix the pig's pen today. I don't want your food, buddy. But like I said, I'm going to put the kids to work on the weed eating, and I'm actually going to put my daughter down here, keeping the pig away from her brother while he weed eats. My son does not particularly love the farm critters, so she's going to be down here running pig interference. But that'll give me one project getting done today as soon as they get out of bed. I think the next thing I'll probably show you is, since you saw how bad the weeds got down here, I'll show you just how bad the gardens got in 2 weeks. Like the day I got sick, was the day on my schedule that I was supposed to get all the gardens weeded, and it wouldn't have been a big deal on that day because it wasn't that bad. But in 2 weeks and with all the rain, it is totally out of control now. Bye, pig. Okay, y'all. This is the big garden. And it's got a bunch of weeds. Like a whole bunch. The weeds are mostly in the rows, so I can actually bring the tiller in if I want and just till those. And I actually came in yesterday and started pulling a little bit of weeds out of the rows just to get an idea of how bad it is. And it is pretty darn bad. It happens, especially like I said with the rain. When we get a lot of rain, you really, if you miss even 1 week, it's hard to catch back up. The other thing I have to do in here is, you can see these T-posts. There's 2 at the top of this bed and 2 at the bottom. And then there's 2 beds down there like that. Those are actually my tomatoes. And I need to run the fence down the middle so that my tomatoes can actually be tied to the fence. But now my tomatoes are actually coming up and getting larger. So now I got to try to get the fence, which is a long piece of fence, up over the tomatoes without breaking the tomatoes. So this is another one I'm going to have help on, and it's actually probably going to take my husband and the kids to help me to get them up there without breaking the tomatoes. And then I've got to decide whether or not I want to just weed the big garden and get rid of all these, or if I want to run the tiller through. Where this is on a hillside, the tiller's kind of a huge pain in the butt. It really knocks me around everywhere. So I'm not sure. Maybe I'll just bring the weed eater in and chop them down kind of low and then just walk on them as I'm working. But some of my stuff is coming up. My beans are up. Bless their hearts. I'm not sure how they're surviving in the midst of all this. My kale and cabbage. So I've got to get this taken care of. Somewhere over there is potatoes, but I don't see them at all. Yeah. I mean, they may still be under here somewhere, and when I get it weeded, I'll find it. There's a squash of some sort. I planted those all along the fence line. You can see another one there. Those guys need weeded out so they can grow up the fence. And then everybody in here has to be fertilized. I haven't fertilized anything yet, but that works fine because I also have to clean out from under the rabbit hutches, and I'll use the rabbit poo to fertilize everything. But there you go. This is just one of those things that sometimes happens if you aren't on top of it all the time. So don't feel bad if you've got a few weeds in your garden, because I'm going to go out on a limb here and guess it doesn't look near as bad as all this crap. Okay, so while I'm down here at the big garden, which is right over there, I thought I'd show you guys the sorghum patch. We planted the sorghum, I think the day I actually got sick, that Tuesday. No, it must have been the Monday before I got sick. We had already tilled this, and it looked nice and beautiful, but that was early in the season, and then I needed to wait to plant, and of course, the weeds came back, and I didn't want to have to go get the big tiller for the tractor, but I desperately needed to plant, so the only thing I knew to do was run the tiller down, the walk-behind tiller, down each of the rows, and leave the walkways alone, just to get it done as quick as I could, so that we could get the sorghum seeds planted. Oh, and by the way, these are remember I started the sorghum in the little floating tray? These are them. They did pretty good. And then I came back through and we started with actual seeds. And you can see they're starting to come up. The other thing you can see is the critters are getting in here. A lot of deer footprints. So far they're not eating anything, but that will change. They love the sorghum. So I've got to get the tiller back up to the garage, and I've got to get the electric around this before these start to really come up, because last year they didn't touch them until, I don't know, they were probably about knee high when the deer started eating them, but that's an awful lot of work to just let the deer eat them. And then down here we planted the glass gem corn, but that seed was a little bug eaten, so I'm not sure it's actually going to come up or not, but we'll see. But yeah, I guess I'm going to have to, same thing with this, either bring the weed eater through or till the walkways or something. But I was in a hurry that day and needed to be able to plant, and the only way I could plant was to till the actual planting rows. And I did something a little sketchy. I love volunteer plants, and because I put rabbit manure and stuff through here all winter long, there's always sunflower seeds, and I couldn't help it, but I left this row. I stopped halfway through and left the sunflowers, and I'm pretty sure that's actually oats, because the mix I make for the rabbits has sunflower seeds, oats, and calf manna in it. So I'm about 90% positive that these are oats. Too bad I'm not trying to grow oats, but at least the sunflowers are pretty. And I'll get this under control, hopefully, very, very soon. Okay, this is the little garden. This is the one up by the house where I like to keep things like for salads and snacking tomatoes and stuff. And actually, I worked in here some Sunday, so it's not as bad as it was, believe it or not. I tore the cages out that were protecting my poor little herb garden over here. And I mean, some of them are doing okay. Back there you can see my amaranth, some peppers, but I got to get in here. Like, that all shades these beds. This is actually my strawberry bed, despite the fact that you can see all those tomatoes and I'm assuming a pumpkin. This is actually where my strawberries are. I pulled all my lettuce and spinach the other day, and I'll get something planted in there. There's my tomatoes. My poor cucumbers were everywhere, and so I've started trying to get them up the thing. And I've got squash bugs on them, and I despise squash bugs. This year, instead of trying to spray them or use diatomaceous earth or anything like that, I am carrying a bucket of soapy water and wearing plastic gloves and picking the nasty things off and just throwing them in there. Back there are the rabbit hutches that are normally on the beds during the off season. You can see I need to weed around them too. And I actually need to dig out the poo underneath everybody. So I'll get that taken care of. I'm in the middle of feeding and watering, but I thought I'd stop and show everybody. The other thing that kind of didn't take place that needed to during this time period is normally I would have already advertised everybody in here. These are all baby litters that are ready to go. So normally I would have already advertised them. I did finally get their pictures taken so that I can get them listed, but haven't yet. There's more hutches over here, and they need cleaned under too. And then I've got little babies that people really haven't even seen yet, and their cages, all the cages need cleaned. That's on today's list for me. Come here, little guys. Hi, mama. But they all need cleaned. So that'll be fun. And then of course I have to get pictures of them because people like to see what litters are up and coming, and I feel like I have totally dropped the ball on pretty much everything, if I'm being honest, but I'll get it back under control. And it's crazy how quickly everything can go just downhill. I mean, that's part of the problem with having so much is you can't really miss a day, and I missed 2 weeks. So I mean, literally all we did during that 2 weeks was keep everybody fed. I mean, cleaned a few cages, but nothing like the, twice weekly that they're normally getting. So that leaves a lot of mess to really clean up from. But yeah, so that's the big garden, or the little garden, the house one. So hopefully I'll get that picked up probably, I think it's going on the list tomorrow to get done. So fingers crossed. Okay, I'm over here at the other rabbit hutch grabbing water bottles, but I figured while I was over here I'd show you something absolutely horrible that I am actually kind of ashamed of, if I'm being honest. My brand new beautiful greenhouse, that's what it looks like right now. So when we finished it, we hadn't put in the real floor yet. We just put down, I did a really thick layer of mulch, and it worked while I was in here every single day moving around. But once pretty much everything came out, it kind of turned into a jungle. And actually I'm going to show you two things while I'm in here. Some of my herbs died because they didn't get watered. The cats have been in here and knocked over my seed trays that I was going to reuse the stuff out of the middle. Believe it or not, I had actually started seeds in that the week I got sick, and I mean, obviously nothing happened with that. And then back here in the back is actually a couple things. Lord, I hope I don't get bit by a snake in here. So in this back corner, if you remember, there was all kinds of stuff growing, potatoes, onions. I actually don't know if anything is still alive in there. I'll have to, I see sunflowers, but I'll have to dig that out and see what's going on. Those are my sweet potatoes I started, and thankfully that one's actually still alive. So I'm probably going to take it out with me as I go and get it planted. But here's the really sad thing. One day, it got really, really hot in here. It was actually the day that I lost some baby rabbits because we had a horrible, horrible heat, and I didn't even think about the worm bins. And now luckily, I think most of them escaped, but my worm bins, when I came out after I realized that they were still in here, they were empty. And so I haven't done anything with it, all that nastiness, it's dry now. And so I'm just leaving it until I get a chance to take them outside, get more worms, and get them somewhere shaded. Although I don't think I could have necessarily saved them that day. We had normal weather, and then it just got so brutally hot just for one day. So it was hard on pretty much all the critters. So both my poor worm bins are dead. So they'll have to be restarted. And my greenhouse, I got to get all these weeds out and then get a real floor in here so that I don't have to weed eat my greenhouse. And I've got to get my seeds cleaned back up and organized again. They're a little bit of everywhere. But yeah, I cannot believe the husband hasn't said anything because this is pretty rough. We spent a lot of time getting this put together, and then, it's just a jungle in here. But it is what it is. Okay, this one has nothing to do with being sick. This was just poor planning on my part. Ordinarily, I would have sold most of these babies. Things just got away from me, and so I didn't advertise them. And now at this point, I'll probably just keep them because I'm done hatching. Normally I hatch every week and sell chicks to people who want layers, that kind of thing. And ordinarily, I've been using those, and I have some totes that I use as brooders. But what happened is these guys got too big for any of that stuff, and I didn't have anywhere really to put them. So I had to use one of the rabbit play yards and fence in a spot in the critter room for them. You can see they've got their little heat lamp back there. And they're making messes with the water, but I'm going to let them finish drinking before I scrape up all the soggy bedding and put it down dry. So that's one of the things I'm having to deal with. And it leaks out here in the middle where they have kicked out all their bedding. I've also got ducks. There's 2 chickens in there. They're not supposed, 3 chickens in there. They're not supposed to be in there, but because I have the lid open on, this is one of my bigger brooders. I don't know if you can see. That lid normally shuts, but the way I've got the heat lamps sitting, they'll melt the plastic fence, so I'm having to keep it open. But same thing, I haven't advertised these ducks very much, and I actually have people waiting on ducks, so I need to holler at them. But yeah, this was just kind of poor planning on my part and ran out of space, and so I had to improvise to keep everybody clean and healthy and all that good stuff. And speaking of which, where the ducks are concerned, ducks are really nasty when they're drinking, and I'm testing this, and this seems to be working. That's a drip tray out from under one of the rabbit cages, like I think it's a 2x2 that Tractor Supply sells. And I filled it full of bedding, and then there's a ceramic towel sitting on it with their water on it. And when they get in there and splash around, most of that water, I mean, you can see there's a little bit of splash outside of it, but most of that water is staying in the tray, and then just every other day I take the tray with the damp bedding, dump it in the compost bin, put dry down, and so that's staying really good, and they're staying good and dry, except for when they're in there splashing. So that does seem to be working. Little more work, but in the long run, it's actually been better, because instead of having to change all the bedding every couple days, I'm only having to change this every other day. So that's super helpful. But yeah, just one of those things, you know, when you're hatching every single week, the chicks build up pretty quick. And actually, this isn't very many. I know it looks like a lot, but I actually hatch out 96 eggs every week during hatching season. So if you look, that's nowhere near 90 birds. So I actually did sell some of them, but it was just to people who were already waiting. Like, I didn't let anybody know that I had any. And so these guys are still left behind. I should have planned a little better for that one, or worked a little harder to find them homes and everything. But they'll be fine, and it's not like we can't use more layers all the time. But yeah, that's another one. Here's another project that kind of got pushed aside. These are mineral buckets, and a friend sent me a whole bunch of them. I drilled holes at the bottom, and then we filled them with dirty rabbit bedding, well, about halfway full. And I was going to use, that used to be pretty dirt, like no weeds, and I was going to top the top of this off with that and then put compost on top, because I have these yellow bush cherry tomatoes that need homes, and they stay pretty small, so I was going to stick them in these, put them over behind the big rabbit hutch, just to give me more tomatoes. Now I have absolutely no idea when I'll get to this, because this is so not a priority compared to cleaning cages, getting garden under control, and all that good stuff. But just another one of those projects just sitting there waiting to be finished, and maybe it'll get done and maybe it won't. Okay, so that's all my morning chores done. As you can see, a lot of things kind of just got away from me. I think it happens to the best of us. I'm not sure everybody wants to admit it, but every year I have projects that just fall apart and they don't get finished. Sometimes I come back to them, sometimes I try them again, and sometimes I just give them up and say that did not work for me. But I did want to share that with you and let you guys see that it happens. You know, don't beat yourself up when you're walking around your place and you're like, oh my God, I have to do this, this, and this, and I haven't done that, and you're starting to feel bad and you're starting to feel like a failure. Just realize when you bite off more than you can chew, some of it just goes away. I mean, as long as you're keeping your critters happy and healthy and doing the best you can, I mean, that's really all you can ask for. But like I said, I'm done with my morning chores. I showed you pretty much the worst things that have started to fall apart while I was trying to keep everything together. So I'm going to go inside, eat some lunch, and then I've got to get to work cleaning all those rabbit cages and scooping all that poop and all that good stuff. But thanks for stopping, and I hope you enjoyed looking at all my mess, and hopefully it makes you feel better about yours if you've got them. Bye, guys.